Welcome to Poetry Flash in Berkeley. I'm Joyce Jenkins. Today we are delighted to present a reading by Dorothy Gilbert and Naomi Ruth Lowinsky. Our readings are co-sponsored by Moe's Books in Berkeley. Ruth Lowinsky's, you can find Naomi Ruth Lowinsky's Death in His Lorca at bookshop.org/list/poetry-flash-readings. Just search for Naomi's name or the title. Dorothy Gilbert's Foxwoman is available at sugartownpublishing.com. Look under titles and ordering. The links are in the chat box. This event is being recorded and will be posted on the Poetry Flash Facebook page and YouTube channel. So you can share it afterwards, even if if there's someone else that you think should see this reading, easy to share. At the end, after the recording ends, we'll keep the Zoom on for a few minutes so those who are joining us live can ask a question or say hello. Remember to visit poetryflash.org to see reviews and news about upcoming events in California. To join our email list, go to poetryflash.org. Today we have two very different yet complementary poets, both deeply rooted in the Bay Area, yet with far-flung poetic, ancestral, and spiritual roots that reach across the globe. Dorothy Gilbert's new book is Foxwoman. I wonder if you can see it here. I'm sure she'll show it to you as well. This book is alive with the sights and sounds of the East Bay. Animals, berries, tastes, birds. The city one sees across the water of the bay. Takes a look back to Brooklyn Heights in 9/11 and quickly returns to the wild, natural beauty of Richmond's industrial shore. The last section, Homage to Fibonacci, is about patterns in the universe, the golden ratio, discovered by the great medieval mathematician. The book opens, as Judy Wells says, with Foxwoman. The title poem in Dorothy Gilbert's gorgeous new collection relates the tale of a vixen rescued from the hunt by a man. She then turns into a beautiful woman. So too, Gilbert ambushes us, seduces us with her sensuous language in this stunning, varied collection. She too is a shapeshifter, sometimes a naturalist, with lush, poetic diction. Dorothy Gilbert's poetry has appeared in the New Yorker, The Nation, the Iowa Review, and other publications from Poetry Flash to Persimmon Tree. Her translations are included in the Norton Anthology of Literature by Women, and she has published translations from 12th century Old French, including the first known Arthurian romance and the poetry of Marie de France, for which she received the Northern California Book Award for Poetry and Translation and an award from the Columbia University Translation Center. Please welcome, with our jazz hands, Dorothy Gilbert. Dorothy, you're muted.
Am I still muted? No.
No, now we can hear you. So start over because we want to catch every word.
Sorry about that. Greetings, everybody. I'm delighted and honored to be here. I'm excited. And I've seen and heard many of these Poetry Flash readings, and they were all just memorable. I was very glad that they were recorded and I could look at them again. But and so I'm really just thrilled to be here. I'm going to start, before I do my book, I'm going to start on a subject that we all know, and I think that a lot of us have strong feelings about. This poem is called the Zoom Sestina. I think most of you know what a sestina is. I'll just quickly say that it's a longish poem invented by the troubadours, 39 lines, 6.5 verses. The line endings, the same words, same 6 words are used throughout for line endings in different set patterns for the stanzas. Stanza 1 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stanza 2 will be 6, 1, 5, 2, 3, 4, and then there's another shift, so that there's a very pleasing, in a good sestina, there's a very pleasing kaleidoscopic effect. So the Zoom Sestina. What will we miss when we are free of Zooms, the long excursions in each other's homes, their rumpled studies, tidy living rooms, seeing them in their own created spaces? And we ourselves need not go out at all, just sit and contemplate those other faces. And how intensely now we know those faces, enclosed as we all are, boxed in these Zooms. Oh, what a fascination for us all, studying our friends who sit there in their homes. Would you have known Joe'd have such classy spaces, or Joan's drab pad become such glowing rooms? But also, as we gaze into these rooms, are we preoccupied with our own faces? While we negotiate with other spaces, are we distracted? Do we, in those Zooms, relish ourselves and stray from others' homes? Mirror, who is the fairest of us all? Who is the wisest mirror of us all? Who speaks out, fair and just, out of their rooms, astutely reads the faces in those homes? It's a new thing, talking to people's faces, to face one's own face too, as in these Zooms, and form a bond with all in small square spaces. What do we give away though in those spaces? God, was I dozing? Did it show it all? Or are we posing sometimes in our Zooms, self-conscious in this gallery of rooms, aware of how we sit, arrange our faces, obsessed with how those others see our homes? But here's a joy. We travel, visit homes of friends, kin, colleagues in their spaces. We're welcomed or accepted, face their faces. Honestly, won't you miss that part at all? Singapore, Florence, Graz, Detroit, these rooms so quickly found. Let's hear it for the Zooms. Sequestered in our homes, as are we all, making our spaces, speaking from our rooms. At least we faces, courtesy of Zooms. For the rest of my time, I'll be reading from my new-ish book published in 2020. It kept me sane, organizing it. Some of the poems are old, some of them are quite new, 2020. And then organizing it all really was what kept me sane and was what I held on to during the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was so huge and seemed so awful. It kept me on even keel. I've always been a nature person, and not least so when I used to go and visit Yosemite, where I had a very good friend, a woman my age, named Anne Abbott, she lived there. She lived in the little settlement of Foresta, which is, if you know Yosemite, is right by Big Meadow. And we had wonderful visits, but also sometimes I would go up there and take care of her cats and her dog, while she took a trip. And I would hike around the vicinity. I wouldn't go far, but I would do a lot of work. I would write. I would look out at the ponderosas and the incense cedars and write. And I'll give you a couple of the poems that I wrote in honor of Anne, who died this January. The Forest of Hands. Hands of the black oak, playing the light. Hands of the ponderosa, a brush for the wind's voice. Hands of cedar froth and alder feather. Hands of cones, fat fingered, sugar and pitch fingered, thin and brittle, broken fingered. Ham-handed sugar pine cones, 2 feet long. Tight-fisted cones, fists full of berries, old thistle fists. Grassy hands, fists full of seeds. Long blue lupin hands, testing the air. Under the earth, old hands in pieces, bones in the dark dirt. Crane Creek, Foresta. There was a creek that came down from Crane Flat and ran through Foresta, and I used to go swimming in it. The cold grasped me. It is in me, moving with me. We are a double creature contending. We keep even if I keep moving. Face down, I swim in soft amber, over sand, mica, greenish stones, black rocks, under boulders, through colder shadows. Face up, I let the current carry me under the alders, green steps, levels, plains of light. The cold loves my hair, eats my face, makes sharp edges in my blood. Face down again, I fight the current, work my shoulders, win my way to the sun. On land, I am the warm, bored victor. So I'll move from Yosemite now to not as happy a place, the campfire. This is, of course, Paradise burning in 2018. And that fire and thus this poem have the absurd name, the campfire. If you breathe, whose dust are you breathing? Whose house, garden, artwork done 20 years? Photos, recipes, paintings, trophies, books. Surely they exist somewhere. They linger just above the ground beside a tombstone chimney. If you're faithful, you'll see them. Keep on, keep trying. 200 miles away, going to work in the smoke, you only wonder, who now with their keys to a vanished house and a charred wallet must make a house around them? Who was trapped in a car? Who lived to be 92, then exploded, oxygen tank and all? If you don't breathe, in your keyless house of air, are you there still with your books and your photos on the ash wall? I'll now read the title poem to this book. Joyce described it very beautifully. I'll just say that I've always been fascinated by changeling figures. The werewolf is one, the silky of North Atlantic countries, the seal, who is sometimes a woman. This one, the fox woman, in Japan, as in the West, the fox is a trickster figure. And I can read something here by a scholar named Powers who says, Kitsune bee, that is foxfire, is the term for a light made by foxes to lead a man astray from the road on which he is traveling, to hypnotize him, seduce him, or entice him by shape changes into danger. And one of the kitsune's favorite transformations is into a woman to frighten or mislead or seduce a man. So Foxwoman, thoughts on two prints by Yoshitoshi and Hiroshiga, two 19th century Japanese artists. And there she is. She turns away. Her little boy, his hand on the brown train of her kimono, stares at her comfortable back, her swirling garment, his face all trust. No shadows there, no knowledge. Stay, he says, play. In that warm room of trunks and screens, rectangles, floral silks, with only a tumbling vine to hint at vagary in nature, how's he to know life's to be one goodbye after another? Here she has lived all these years in this house with this husband, a human being. He rescued her, a vixen. Her young fur sheen caught the eye of hunters in dead orange grasses. She led them, looped them, did her best to dizzy them, but they wore her down, closed in. Suddenly he rode up, scattered them all, scooped her to his saddle. Shaking, weak with gratitude, she turned into a woman. That was the real ambush. Oh, he was stunned by her beauty, but not for long. A quick man with his instincts, he knew her gift. At home, he gave her silks, paintings, even a small dog, and a koto, a stringed instrument. She learned to play brilliantly. The notes hung like fruit above their heads. He'd praise her, tell her stories of human history, wars, treacheries, honor beyond death. He'd guess her thought and praise it too, touching her shoulder. A pair of hunting spirits, they started thoughts from the mind's dim thickets, together sensing paths, traces. He stroked her hair, her stomach. She leaped. One animal, they spoke the speech. In that space, that den of themselves they'd hollowed out of nothing, what were names, labels, captain and captive? Years passed. The sun grew, walked. What whiff woke her? Swamp spring, perhaps. Newborn's damp fur, the salt of it. Sweet earth, sweet grass. Traces of sex, dusty or fresh. Odors of the movement of blood, the pulse of fear in the dune. Fox barks in the swamps, the phosphorescence of her kind. The nights, the reeds, the crying. The part of her still in the room is woman, robe, obi, hair dressed in splendid loops. Past the threshold, her face is lost to us. Behind a screen, her profile shadow lengthens, strangely proportioned. Fox nose, fox ears, fox leg and paw. She goes to Kitsune bee, the glow in the night meadow, the foxes all communal, casting their fatal light, luring a man from his safe way on the road to town, drawing him into the marshes of longing and terror, and of course, loss. Very well, change of scene. I'm moving us to New York now, and where I lived for a long time. And as Joyce mentioned, I lived in Brooklyn Heights, right across the mouth of the East River, where it opens in New York Harbor, and the downtown, the southern tip of Manhattan. When JFK was shot, The morning after, I went down to the esplanade, the walkway opening where that was placed over the Brooklyn docks, and where you could go and walk, and you could look across the East River at Manhattan, or you could look out into the harbor, or you could look down the Brooklyn shore at the miles and miles of the beautiful freighters and their rigging. And it was always very cheering, and it was something I made a point of seeking out after the death of Kennedy. At the Brooklyn docks, November 23, 1963. In the morning air, the freighter Havskar from Oslo lies drawn up at her Brooklyn pier. The light breaks on her masts and ropes and shows the endless tents and triangles that crowd in the white air and rise and ride each other. A man waves and a boom descends. A shout and a crate is hoisted up from dock to decks. It swings and lands, and the men on board stow it away. Near me, above the roofs, above the ships, the workmen spread tar on the roofs, black in the early sun. The smell of seawater and tar is thick. It stings in the nostrils, and like coffee, wakes me to what I see and what I know. Where the light strikes, there is the thrust of sadness up the white spars and ropes, the shapes of day. Along the decks and on the Havskar's flag at half-mast, like her neighbors and my own. Is work as old as grief? Watching, I feel the slow and wounded groping of my senses toward my old life. Here in my neighborhood, under the flags lost among ropes, the men cry out, crates swing in the silence after. Under the watchful eyes, the burden lands. All down the shore, the day changes and moves. Many years later, on September 11th, 2001, New York had a terrible disaster that I think affected many of us who had nothing to do with New York. I had long since settled in California, but I still thought of New York as my home city or the city of my youth. And so I was very, very struck by it all. And I wrote this poem, which is about the notices that people left that when they were looking for their loved ones, hoping that by some chance their loved ones were alive. The days after, September 12th, 2001, and following. I am looking for my fiancée, a small woman who wore a slate-colored suit this morning, who has dark ringlets down to her shoulders. She is my future. She's 5'1", brown eyes, 102. Here's my number. Please let me know. I'm looking for my husband of 30 years. If you see him, he's hard to miss. He's big, 6'2", 220 pounds. Wore a red tie this morning, doesn't look 60. Not much help, I know, but the photo, he's distinctive, isn't he? Isn't he? I'm looking for my sister, stepdaughter, father-in-law, cousin, office mate for the past 6 years. I stayed home with a cold. I'm looking for everyone. My backpacking friend from the Cullens on Skye in 1982. My lawyer's nice niece, the jazz singer, my daughter's favorite aunt. Where is Cecil, the sandwich maker, down on the ground floor? Where are Paula and Prithvi, up on 97th? Where's Layla, our receptionist, the belly dancer, so graceful? She's hardly human. I am looking for love. I'm looking for the punchline of a joke. I'll remember the sound of my brother's voice if I remember the joke. I'm looking for the skyline. I'm looking at thick air, and the terrible powder. back in California again, and one or two poems celebrating friends who suffered and went into difficulties, hoping to and honoring them. This poem is called Survivor. The survivor is me, and the poem is for Tom Favel, dead of AIDS at 45, this in the early 90s, of course. Day, a rickety train bumps and jolts its way slowly out of the station, the still place where I last saw you alive. It gathers speed. Oh, we're well out of the tunnel now. Light shocks, details add up. Sooty buildings, freight cars, trucks, marshy fields, railroad scenery. Then porches, laundry, little fenced-in yards, each with its hopeful rose bush, its plastic pool. Somewhere behind us, you are still yourself, as real as speech or touch. We grind through the fields. Shall I jump off? Jump! Run in the high slashing grasses, the sucking marshes full of cattails. Climb over fences, through the yards, scratched, bruised, filthy, ridiculous. Crash into the station, dark now in my mind's eye. Search through the shadowy furniture and silent crowds. See you standing as you stand, speaking as you speak. And this is my small attempt to heal something. I had a cat who had kidney disease. I had to hydrate her, give her injections. How to hydrate Kate? It's easy. The vet shows you. At home, you use the ironing board. Hold the cat by her withers. Check the drip set one last time. Are there bubbles in the flask? Is the line clear of air? The needle sterile? Test all attachments. Check the calibrations. Then quickly plunge the needle in loose skin at her shoulder. You've got to do it for her old no-good kidneys, her dirty blood, poisoned by her body. This cat's feisty, but she won't complain. Her memory is keen of suffering and this brief ease. You've got the news on the radio. While the animal becomes a water bag, you hear what's current. Old age is wasting your generation fast, your singers and senators crashing and fading. Eastern Europe, like a blood-soaked map, disintegrates. East Africa grinds bones to sand. In Sacramento, in Albany, on the legislature floor, they've got fistfights. Holes slowly widen in the atmosphere. Navajo miners die, young men, from the uranium we needed for the atom bomb. You stand there listening, saving a cat's life. You're finished. You free her. Already her fluids settle. For now, you've washed away the viciousness determined to happen. I'm going to change. Let's see. I'm going to change completely my mood and here, this is the word. How I hate the F word. No, no, not the thing it denotes. Yes, yes, I use it myself sometimes in extreme anger or disgust. I save it for those. But is there an uglier word in the whole world? A plow stuck in the sucking muck. Both of your luck, you schmuck. I'm not the first who's noticed. Is there a word that's right? Coitus, like a cold medical instrument probing your body. Intercourse, even worse. Screwing for wing nuts. Here's an idea, call it something that tastes good, but also a lovely word, euphonious. Celery. Celery with salt. Celery with cream cheese. Well, okay, that's fine just for you in a private moment. Delectable weariness, no lights, or maybe at a party gone dull. Your loved ones falling asleep. Over the creme brulee, you whisper and say, celery, celery with cream cheese. That wakes your sweetie up. What word describes a thing itself? A rose by any name at all is so much more. Can you describe its fragrance? I don't think so. Some things defy the boundaries of words, or words cramp them. But at last alone with your own. There's celery. Celery with salt. Celery with cream cheese. And it's getting to be a time. So I think maybe this should be my last one. Cyclist. As a girl, once or twice I thought, how do I know I'm me?
I think
A
she's,
child. What if really I'm at the
she's,
other end of life? An old woman, judgment gone, who thinks she's a girl on a bike in the wind, who wings up a steep slope, almost without effort, and down again, singing, her strong breath taking in, pushing out the breath of the world. But really, she can't get out of her chair without a hand up. Now I'm an old woman. I know that much, or do I? What if I'm a girl on a bike, winging through the countryside, working her strong legs, loving her subtle balance, her breathing, looking, singing, thinking for a moment, what if I'm an old woman? Would it be so bad? She sings to the fields, the same song over and over to catch the first joy, go deep inside it. She plans her life, a chanteuse surrounded by her adoring band. Her lover on bass looks over and blows her a kiss she can see just out of the corner of her eye. Her voice, a slender waterfall, curls down in white spirals. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Thank you. I'm so glad that your 2020 book we finally got to hear it after all of this that we've all been through. Thank you so much. Very grateful. It was a pleasure. Now we have Naomi Ruth Lowinsky, and Naomi's fifth book of poetry is Death and His Lorca, where, as Forrest Hamer puts it, during a return to Spain as visitor, as descendant of the exiled, seeking the resting place of Lorca, the poet reckons with loss, with aging, and with the host of shadows and various light. Death and His Lorca includes Lowinsky's strongest work from the last 2 decades. As she wrote, it is at once archetypal, personal, political, and influenced by the great Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca, whose understanding of duende, involving the presence of death, became the magnet for the poems in this collection. The dead show up as late kin, late friends, ancestors, tricksters, spirit guides, and oracles. Her poetry books include Dreaming Night Terrors, the Faust Woman poems, and Adagio and Lamentation. Her memoir is The Sister from Below, When the Muse Gets Her Way. She writes prose essays, many published in Psychological Perspectives and the Jung Journal. She is a Jungian analyst and a member of the San Francisco Institute. For years, she has led Deep River, a writing circle there. She recently co-edited an anthology of poems by its participants, Soul Making in the Valley of the Shadow. She's also co-editor of Marked by Fire, Stories of the Jungian Way. It's a great pleasure to welcome Naomi Ruth Lowinsky.
I'm unmuted. First of all, I just want to say, Dorothy, that was such a beautiful reading. I was really moved. And I too will take you on journeys into somewhat different places. I made some notes for myself so I wouldn't forget what I wanted to say. And thank you so much, Joyce, for your introduction. You covered some of the ground I was going to cover. I'm just remembering in the early aughts, I think it was, that I did some poetry flash readings back in the days when we actually were in person at Moe's. And it's just so wonderful to be back here in this form of Zoom, which I'm getting used to. And I really liked your poem about that, Dorothy. So as most of you probably know, Duende is the name of an earth spirit in the mythos of southern Spain. Lorca insisted that Duende was essential to the arts. And for him, Duende includes all kinds of things that I associate with myself: irrationality, earthiness, a heightened awareness of death, and a dash of the diabolical. For me, Lorca is a poetic ancestor, a Virgil who guides me in and out of underworlds, a major influence whose work derives from music, the deep song of the Gypsy Ciguera. In Lorca's essay, Deep Song, he writes that the Ciguera begins with a terrible scream. It is the scream of dead generations, a poignant elegy for lost centuries, the pathetic evocation of love under other moons and other winds. Long ago, in the before times, when my husband Dan and I traveled to southern Spain, I felt the duende climb up inside me, from the soles of my feet to the top of my head in Granada, where we visited Lorca's house, as well as in the home of Manuel de Falla, the Spanish composer, and in the fabled Alhambra, which is an enchantment of poetry and music in stone. A series of poems poured through me during that pilgrimage. They are saturated in Lorca's Duende, and later, as we traveled to Cordoba with its tragic history of the Jews, in the Duende of our ancestors. So I want to start with the opening poem. It's the proem. It comes before the rest of the book. And it's called Flamenco Dancer. When her arms rise up like Gaudi's spires, and her hands unfurl like forest violets, when the lamentation of the Moors, the Gypsies, the Jews makes an agony about her eyes, and her spine is a wild and supple snake, when she hitches up her skirts and the stamping begins in red shoes, she is riding the exiled horse of her hips over the yellow land, over dust that remembers, ashes of the burnt, bones of the broken. The soles of her feet beat a drum, arousing the spirits of her great, 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 great grandparents. She rides and she rides that exiled horse over Lorca's unmarked grave. I think many of you know that Lorca was murdered, assassinated by Franco's goons in 1936 when he was 38 years old. And we still have, nobody's found his grave to this day. And he, I think they were after him because of his left-wing politics and because he was a gay man. Okay, now we're going to travel to Cordoba. And Dan and I were in Cordoba on that trip, and we were staying at an Airbnb, and it seemed like the front doorbell started ringing, and it just wouldn't stop, and it led to this poem called Cordoba Haunts Me. All night, the ringing of the doorbell. Has someone forgotten their keys? Is Lorca's ghost in town? Perhaps it's the poet Walada, taunting my sleep, chanting her provocations in Arabic across 9 centuries. Ding dong the bell. Each time an unseen guest, a poltergeist, is ringing. Dan is rational. Maimonides is his man. He times the bell. Once a minute, once every 2 minutes. His theory, a battery is dying slowly. Jung is my man. The dead have arrived on their way to Jerusalem, on their way to Mecca. They ring and ring here in the city of moaning doves, where 3 sons of Abraham once cultivated each other's gardens. There are as many ghosts here as there are pillars in the Mesquita, as many ghosts as there are red and white arches, hanging lamps, luminous mosaics, points of light, emptiness in the Maksura, where longing is carved into stone. As many ghosts as there are interloping stained glass windows, weeping saints, painted virgins. As many ghosts as there are phantoms murmuring in the synagogue. I hear them, feel the density of their prayer. They pray for peace in Jerusalem, for peace in me. Oh, fountains of the gone, arabesques of exile, city of the burnt and the forbidden, remember us. Okay, we're coming back to America for a little bit. And this poem is, I think some of you probably remember the late Al Young, who was a marvelous African-American poet in our community, who also was the poet laureate of California some years ago. And his poetry, like Lorca's, is influenced by song and by music and song. And he was very influenced by jazz and by blues. And I wrote this poem and dedicated it to him, and then later was able to read it to him at a place where we met, and he liked it. So it's called Your People Are My People. My people are the people of the pianoforte and the violin. Mozart people, Bach people, Hallelujah people. My people are the Requiem people, Winterreise people, Messiah people, who crossed the Red Sea, Pharaoh's dogs at our heels. Your people are the drumbeat people, the field holler people, the conjure people, blues people, jubilee people, people who talk straight to God. Your people are the old man river people, the drinking gourd people, singing the Lord's song in a strange land. My family had a Sabbath ritual. We lit the candles, sang Go Down Moses, sang Swing low, sweet chariot, sang slave music, freedom music, secret signals in the night music. My father said, you never know when Pharaoh will be back. I was young. I was American. I thought my people were the Beatles, the Lovin' Spoonful, the Jefferson Airplane, singing Alice and her White Rabbit through all those changes my parents did not understand. That didn't last. That was leaving home music, magic mushroom music. Puff the Dragon music floating off to Never Never Land, now heard in elevators, in the pyramids of finance. But Old Man River still rolls through my fields. Bessie Smith still sweetens my bowl. Ma Rainey appears in the inner sanctum of the C.G. Jung Institute, flaunting her deep black bottom. My father's long gone over Jordan, and I'd hate for him to see how right he was about Pharaoh. But I want you to know, Al, every Christmas in Black churches all over Chicago, the Messiah shows up, accompanied by my mother's Hallelujah violin. And I just want to wave at all my family that's out there who remember these things and remember my mother who is no longer with us, sadly. Back in Spain, this is the title poem, Death in His Lorca. It's addressed to death. You were always with him, etched in the mountains, slapping his face with a gust of terror at night in the Albaicin, where a gypsy might spirit his soul to a cave while his friend kept on laughing, drinking. Your icy fist in his guts, your minotaur shadow looming over the Moorish wall. You sang him a broken moon. You slipped him the knife at the wedding. You entered his dream spitting teeth. Why couldn't you let him have his life while he had it? Death, this is your country. Yours, the auto da fe. Yours, the synagogue's ghosts. Yours, the ruins at Medina al-Zahra. And Lorca, he's written you into everything, his end always known to his beginnings. As fire knows its ash, as blood knows the heart's final shudder. Okay, my mother is back, this time in a dream, very scary dream, where her head was severed from her body. And it was her, but it wasn't her. It was kind of like an archetypal great mother head, but also felt like my mother. And this severed head was in a rage. I should say this poem was written in the Obama years, where there was some real issues that made me really unhappy with him, which most of the time I wasn't, with his immigration policies, and it came out of that. Mother's severed head. Mother's severed head is talking in your sleep. All night long, she's talking in tongues, talking like there's no tomorrow. Tomorrow has gone berserk, smashed tablets, hurled stones. Terror breeds terror and broken children. Look for mother in memory. Look for her in myth, in oak leaf, in river, in weeping willow. There's no sign of her body. Chaos breeds chaos and frightened children. Coyote seizes the border. Sex is traffic. Love is roadkill. Once mother worked for Chicago childcare, taught parenting skills to baby mamas. Before blood crippled blood, before guns became God. Her body can't find her head. Mayhem breeds mayhem in the streets of Chicago. Drug money kidnaps the kids of Honduras. Sex is roadkill. Gangs are God. Mother's in a rage about Oracle, Arizona. How can a town whose name means her shrine cast snake eyes on terrified children? Hate is a wildfire. It leaps across borders. Gangs and guns ricochet. What jackal god eats babies? Mother is a summons in the cave of dreams. Listen for her wailing in the dark before the dawn, wailing like there's no tomorrow. So now we're going back even earlier to that day in 2008 when Obama was elected, and he spoke in Grant Park. And it was that same day that his white grandmother, his Hawaiian grandmother who had helped raise him, died. Her name was Madeline Dunham, and this poem is written in her voice, and it's called Madeline Dunham Passing On. And there's an epigraph from a, how do I do this? Click, San poem. It's a poem from the San people in South Africa that says, a wind blows when we die, for each of us owns a wind. I never knew I'd be wind when I died. A warm wind on my way home from the islands, a light breeze off the lake, breath in my grandson's lungs as he speaks to the crowds on this, his election night. Does he know this is me touching his face and the faces of those who never believed they'd see the day? Who'd have thought I'd be breath in the bodies of so many strangers? Who'd have thought I'd be music, sweet as the sound of the slack key guitar? Or that I'd become an ancestral spirit in the land where they know how to feed the dead? They're roasting 4 bulls, 16 chickens, some sheep and goats to feast the one who belongs to us all, to the Kenyan village of his grandmother Sarah, to the spirits of his father and mother, his black and white grandfathers, to the ones who are laughing and crying in Grant Park. In the land of the dead, nothing is over. We still wander, still worry, take pleasure, make trouble, demand our portion of beer, of drumming, of dancing all night. I say to you living, though I've drifted away, though I'm only a sigh, an exhalation, I can feel your whole world shift, though I'm only the faraway sound of a slack key guitar. So as many of you likely know, there is a goddess in Judaism. She's called the Shekhinah, and she likes to show up on Friday nights, and she's pretty sexy. And this poem is called The Shekhinah in Cordoba. In the sound of an early morning toilet flush, in the voices of fishmongers opening the market, in the doorbell again, who rings? The bride of Sabbath arrives. How long since she showed up in a bed in Cordoba, wound her legs around her love, tasted first light? The doves have stopped moaning lamentations. Now it's fire, honey-basted flesh, sweet fire of the loins, thigh music. Oh, gatherer of dreams, Oranges are your harvest and purple grapes. Returning to Lorca's story, this poem is called On the Broken Back of Lorca's Story, and we're in Madrid. Time has not washed you away, nor have the rains in the Puerta del Sol or sorrow's brown river. They still dream you in Madrid. They feed you apples and honey. What of the hungry mouth of your grave? What of the silver coins that never found your eyes? Eyes of the Guernica bowl, burning eyes of my ancestors in the Auto da Fe. Feed me on pomegranate seeds. Long ago, you promised me what grandfather Goethe promised us both. Show me the face of your death. Hand me a basket of bone to gather the parts I need. Your gypsy knife, your Harlem feet, your abracadabra tongue. Your blood gets under my skin. History crushes your harvest with purple feet. Time has not washed you away, nor have the rains in the Puerta del Sol, nor sorrow's brown river. And we're back in Cordoba. This poem is called It's All About Light. It's all about light in Cordoba, river light, leaf light, light of the inner garden. It's all about arches and glimpses of sky, stone flowers, stone curls, stone gathers its vines into cascades of light. How is it stone turns to shimmer? It's all about old walls and babies. It's all about high boots and scarves flung just so about the throat. It's all about food in Cordoba, broken eggs with black sausage, aubergines with honey, bull's tail, fried baby squid, battered anchovies. It's all about olives and wine. It's all about lovers in Cordoba. How is it they shine in the fountains? How is it that swarms of school children make the cobblestones laugh? The Guadalquivir reflects the old Roman bridge, makes ovals of its arches. It's all about light in Cordoba, light of the secret Sabbath candles, light from the longing of exile, light from exhumed bones, old light from before the expulsion, before the dimming of Maimonides, before Averroes was banned, before Judah Halevi left town, never to find his Jerusalem. And I'd like to end with the last poem in the book, which is in Granada, fittingly enough. And it's, full of Lorca and the Alhambra. It's a lot about the Alhambra. It's called A Song of Granada. There is a flower in Granada, a golden flower with 8 petals, a flower of gypsum and alabaster dust, a flower that holds up the sky. I see your face in the fountain. I see your Berber eyes, Clothe me in myrtles and spiraling vines. Let nothing break the spell. You are my Lion of Judah. I am your gate of pomegranate, your moonflower, your sunflower, your shimmer, your flow, your longing. Sing me a gated city, whose ears know the song of the nightingale, whose eyes know the leap of the fawn. Sing me a garden of heaven, where jasmine and rose intertwine, where pools reflect forever, before you become a sack of gold, and I your empty cup. Meet me in the morning, show me your shrine to the end of our time, an empty shell of alabaster dust, an arabesque of weeping. Where is the Son of Granada, who awakens the sky with his flying horse, who dresses the mountains in gypsy skirts? They clap their hands, they sing. There was a flower in Granada, a golden flower with 8 petals, a long ago flower that held up the sky before the stars were sacked. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Naomi Ruth Lowinsky. Thank you. And just thank you and Dorothy Gilbert for the wonderful reading, for this respite on this Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much. If you out there joining us would like to find these beautiful books, please go to bookshop.org and just put in Naomi Ruth Lowinsky or Death in His Lorca, and you will find it. It will pop up. And for Dorothy Gilbert's Foxwoman, go to sugartownpublishing.com and look under titles and ordering. And these links are also in the chat box. Thanks to Rosalinda Monroy, our tech support today. And remember to visit poetryflash.org for news and reviews. We're getting it up there as quickly as we can. And see us if you're in Northern California at the Bay Area Book Festival. That is May 7th and 8th. So thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.